Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1999 political comedy film, Dick. Now, this is one of those movies that, when it came out, it didn't do dick in the box office. It did pretty poorly. In fact, it was a bomb. Probably because it was definitely a hard sell. It's kind of hard to sell Dick to a wide audience, especially when it's a political fantasy satire movie. It didn't help that the studio marketed it absolutely terribly. They marketed it as if it was a film solely for teenage girls because they thought that was the only demographic that was really going to want to watch Dick. And I definitely feel that that was the wrong choice, considering that it's a film that was about a fictionalized take on the Watergate scandal. All of this being said, over the years, there's been a lot of people who have adopted the film as a cult classic. And after checking it out for the first time, I could definitely see why. I thought this was a cute, charming, genuinely funny movie. Like, I wouldn't say that it's fantastic. I do think that as a comedy, it could have been funnier. It could have been even sharper with its satire. But it was still an enjoyable watch. But before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on Dick, I would like to give a special shout out to Andrew for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The links to all three are going to be in the video description down below, and I will try to get your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, Dick is directed by Andrew Fleming, who prior to directing this directed The Craft, which was his breakout film as a director. Because his first film was Bad Dreams, a horror film from the late 80s that I do like, but it didn't really set the box office on fire when it came out. Then he did another movie called Threesome, which wasn't really that successful either. But The Craft was a breakout smash success for him. And it really put him on a lot of people's radar. And his follow up was this film. And I find that to be really fascinating because a lot of the time when a director has their first major breakout film, they don't really pick a project like this to be their next movie. Because this was always going to be a film that was more than likely going to fail and not find that big of an audience more than anything else. But it just speaks to the type of filmmaker that Andrew Fleming was at the time. He just didn't really care about whether or not he was directing a hit. He just wanted to direct something that he was passionate about. And you could definitely see that being the case here with Dick, because he was also involved with the creative process of it. He was a co-writer of the screenplay. And I think he did an amazing job directing this. This is a movie that is very much trying to look like a product of its time. It is actively trying to have a vibe and even a visual appearance at points of a movie that would have possibly came out in the 70s or, the early 80s. And I definitely think that Fleming really nailed that overall approach when it comes to how he framed his shots or how he directed the film overall. It doesn't look like a movie that was shot in the late 90s that's supposed to be in the 70s, at least not to me personally. I think there are some people who might agree to disagree, but visually, I think it actually does evoke a lot of echoes of the era that the film was taking place in. And it's not only an impressive film when it comes to the aesthetic value, I also think it's an impressive film when it comes to just how well he balanced what was very serious political drama with some, really silly comedy. So there's some broad bits of comedy in this, but there's also some comedy that's a little more subtle, and I think he does a great job with the timing of both of those styles of comedy equally well in the film. And also builds tension at points when the film is getting to a point where your two teenage girls who are your two leads are being followed by the government and are being targeted, and he does create a very effective sense of paranoia and even a little bit of dread in those scenes, even though for the most part it's kind of a light, airy comedy about something that definitely was not very light and airy when it comes to the headlines or its impact on American politics. But he just found a way to make it work, though, directing wise, despite the fact that this is a very thin tightrope that he was walking on when it comes to the subject matter of the film. And yeah, I think he also did an equally as good job in terms of, working with this cast and getting some really fantastic performances out of them. And overall, I do think it represents a lot of Fleming's strengths as a filmmaker and as a director. And I do think that it's one of his, honestly, last great films as a director. I don't know what happened to this guy after this movie. It's like all of a sudden he decided to start sucking dick as a director. Because just look at his filmography after this movie. It is such a dramatic fall off. Like, he did a movie called The In-Laws, which was terrible, and was like a remake of a 70s movie. He also did the Nancy Drew film with Emma Roberts. He did Hamlet 2, which I've heard good things about, but I don't really care for it. I didn't think the direction was that impressive, especially in comparison to Dick or The Craft or Bad Dreams. And then he did a movie called Barefoot with Scott Speedman, and then Ideal Home in 2018 with Steve Coogan and Paul Rudd, who looks really weird with a full beard. Like, I didn't even recognize him at all. But yeah, that's his filmography post Dick. Not good. Doesn't get much of a rise out of the audience, uh, or myself, because there's really not anything to get that excited about when it comes to Andrew Fleming's career after Dick came out and flopped in the box office in 1999. But the film, to me, despite the fact that it didn't do well financially, and there were some critics that didn't quite get it, it is a movie, though, that has really caused some people to develop a taste for it, just like those cookies in the movie, with that special ingredient. Now, the film is written by Fleming and Cheryl Longan, and I think this is a really clever, smart script for the most part. I do have some problems with it, but they're not enough to really affect my enjoyment that much when it comes to the movie. The film, from what I've read, at one point was actually intended to be more of a serious film about Deep Throat and about the Watergate scandal, but with, some social commentary and comedy thrown in. But then they realized that the two girls that were a part of the plot, and Betsy Jobs and Arlene Renzo, they thought that the premise and the idea of them being Deep Throat was just so hilarious that they decided to make that the focus of the plot instead of the other things that they were doing with the screenplay. And I definitely think that was the right choice, because if they were just like side characters, I don't think it really would have worked as well. And speaking of things that didn't work to me, the opening is just weird. The opening is funny. Like, I'll admit it, it cracks me up. The opening scene with an interview with Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein in the 90s, with the host played by French Stewart, who's trying to get them to reveal the identity of Deep Throat, and they refuse to do so. Or one of them, I think it's Bernstein, almost does it, but then Bob prevents him from saying the truth. And the host, he's adamant that they don't actually know who Deep Throat is, because Deep Throat isn't real. They made him up. And it's just one of those just really weird opening sequences that doesn't start the film off on the best foot to me. It really feels like something that feels like it would be played during the end credits instead of something that opens the film. But it is quirky, and it is a good introduction to the quirkiness of the screenplay. But I just think that it could have been handled a little bit better, because it's just kind of a car crash of an opening, to be perfectly honest. But once you get past that, and you were introduced to your two teens, Betsy and Arlene, who are these two total ditzes who live in Washington, D.C., and they wind up sneaking out of the Watergate Hotel because one night, the same night as the Watergate break-in, because Arlene lives at the Watergate Hotel. And so, Betsy and Arlene sneak out one night, and then they run into G. Gordon Liddy, and they panic and run away. And they then wind up going to the White House on a school tour. They run into Liddy again. They don't recognize him, but Liddy sees that they're there, and he remembers seeing them on the stairs. So then he points them out to Hadelman, who then interrogates them. And then they wind up, through a series of circumstances, meeting the president, President Nixon. And the way Nixon was written in this was scathing, but also absolutely hilarious to me. And I think Fleming and the other writer, they really wanted to knock Nixon down, because there was this campaign that had been going on for a while to sanitize Nixon's image, to try to make it appear as if the Watergate scandal, everything that Nixon did involving it, wasn't as bad as it appears, and he wasn't that as much of a crook as people thought he was. And there was just a lot of essays, a lot of media pieces that were basically just trying to paint Nixon as a, not only a better president, but also just a better person than he actually ever was. Because in reality, Nixon was an absolute piece of shit. He was a shitty president and a shitty human being. And there was a reason why he was disgraced and impeached in the end. Like, the whole way that people were trying to turn people's opinions around on Nixon, and even to this day, just baffles me. Like, he should just be talked about the way that he actually is. Yeah, I got the troops out of Vietnam. He only did that because his approval ratings were in the toilet. If his approval ratings were high, he would have never even gotten the troops out of there. So that's just a whole other, can of worms, so to speak. But I just think it's hilarious just how manipulative Nixon is in this. Where, he sweet talks the girls, he manipulates them because they're seeing things. Like they see money being exchanged and documents being shredded in a room in the White House. And then, Nixon is able to convince them to be quiet by giving them the position of a secret youth advisor to the president. And before that, he gave them the special duty of being the president's dog walkers, uh, which I think is just uproarious. It's really funny. And the girls keep bringing these cookies to the president, and they have a special ingredient in them, which is pot, because their pothead I think Betsy's pothead brother keeps a lot of his stash in the walnut jar, and walnuts are an ingredient in these cookies. And so the president's getting high. The girls are talking to the president and they're giving him ideas. They're the reason why he gets the troops out of Vietnam. They're the reason why the conflict between the U.S. and Russia is averted, because the Russian leader eats some of the cookies and sings Broadway songs with the rest of the U.S. staff. Uh, they're also the reason why Nixon does the peace sign when he gets on Air Force One and poses for the press, because one of the girls did the peace sign and he was like, "What is that? What's the peace sign?" Uh, well, actually, he didn't know what the peace sign was. He just asked them what they were doing, and then we're like, "It's peace." And then he just did the thing. The way that the writers incorporated actual real events during Nixon's presidency, and how it was just orchestrated by these two ditzy teenage girls, I thought was really clever and very well written. And an equally well written thing is the weird relationship that Arlene starts to form in her head with the president, because it's something that if you didn't handle it the right way would just come across as creepy and not funny. But the way that it's written, it finds the right balance, and it leads to some genuinely funny moments, like the dream sequence on the beach. And not only that, like just some hilarious double entendre dialogue where one of the girls is basically talking about how she's done with dick. She's like, "I can't believe that I ever liked a dick." And it's like this series of dialogue where she's just talking about dick, but it sounds like she's not just talking about the president, that she's actually talking about dick. And so it's honestly really funny. And just the way that the entire president's staff, including the president, are just portrayed as these utter incompetent, bumbling fools, which in reality was very close to the actual case, considering how the whole Watergate scandal wound up coming to be in the first place, and ultimately how it wound up in the press, and how so many people in that administration wound up paying the price for it. And the whole thing with Arlene's infatuation with Nixon then leads to just an absolute cringe-inducing scene where she goes on a tape recorder and just expresses her love for Nixon for like 18 minutes. And that is even more hilarious when you know the context of the gag, because there were 18 minutes missing from the Watergate tapes. And so the screenplay is now insinuating that those 18 minutes were just this teenage girl talking about how much she loves President Nixon. And then Nixon later on, when he was hearing the tapes, he erased it. And it's through those tapes that the girls see the true nature of Nixon. He kicks Chester the dog. He doesn't like the Jews. He's an asshole. He's not this kind, fun president that he is making them think that he is. And so they decide to confront him about it. He thinks that they're going to give him crap for Watergate because this is already in the news and he's already being targeted for it. And he blows up on them. The girls are then like, we didn't actually want to come in here and confront you about Watergate. We were talking about Chester and how you hate the Jews. And then Betsy's like, I'm a Jew. What, do you hate me? Like, and so eventually the president kicks them out of the White House. And now they're no longer working for the president. They're no longer helping him. And while this is going on, Woodward and Bernstein, they're trying to figure out what's going on behind Watergate, and they're trying to create a story about it. And the two girls wind up calling the Washington Post after they got kicked out of the White House. And initially, they're just going to prank call the Washington Post. But then they decide to actually set up a meeting with Woodward and Bernstein to reveal some information that they know regarding Watergate. And when Woodward and Bernstein are asking for their code name, or a name for them, they come up with Deep Throat because Betsy's pothead brother got busted by his parents that night for going to a porno theater and seeing Deep Throat. And so when Woodward and Bernstein are asking these two girls over the phone what their code name is, they just go, Deep Throat, Deep Throat, because the brother walks by Betsy's door. And I thought that was really funny. That was hilarious. And then honestly, speaking of hilarious bits of writing and just entirely hilarious scenes, every scene with Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein is a laugh riot. It killed me. It is so funny. They're portrayed as total incompetent reporters who don't know jack shit, and they don't get along, and they even insult each other. You smell of cabbage. Like, it is so absurd and ridiculous, but the way that it's written and the way it's executed is really funny. But what's not funny is that the girls are now being targeted by the president and the FBI, and it actually leads to some genuinely tense moments. And everything eventually comes to a head when the girls, as Deep Throat, they give the Washington Post this information, but it turns out to not be correct. So it makes Bob and Carl look even more incompetent than they already are. And the girls had a list of names that they got from Liddy's foot when they went and visited the White House earlier, and they saved it in a scrapbook. But the dog actually legitimately ate it. And so they don't have it. And they explain that to the reporters, and they're just like, oh, come on, the dog ate it. It's like, but really, the dog did. And so they just think that they're just completely making it up. But then eventually, the girls decide to sneak into Hadelman's house. And that's where they find that there's a tape recording that is incriminating, very incriminating for the Nixon administration. And they wind up giving a transcription of that, which is typed up by one of the girls, which ties into the first scene that we see with the two of them, where they're writing up a love letter to this celebrity named Bobby Sherman for like a date Bobby Sherman contest. And they give Bob and Carl the transcription. They keep the tape as a souvenir. This is what causes Nixon to resign because the scandal becomes public and it's verified this time. And of course, even the whole thing at Haldeman's house is just a funny bit of shenanigans because she sneaks in to get the tape while Betsy distracts this teen that's there, who she assumes is the son of Haldeman, but it's actually just the friend of Haldeman's son, and it's played by a very young Ryan Reynolds, who's playing a totally against the normal type that he would be known for. He's not sexiest man alive Ryan Reynolds here. Like, this is unconfident, uncoordinated, nerdy as hell Ryan Reynolds. And Betsy winds up sleeping with him, but it's pretty much for no reason because Arlene was able to get the tape without Betsy doing really anything. And it wasn't really Haldeman's son. It was this other guy. And that's how they got the tape. They even essentially tell Haldeman to screw himself when he catches them later because they already have the tape. And then Nixon resigns and he listens to the message. He hears that, Arlene is talking about how much she loves him, and he erases it because he would be crucified if it was perceived that he had an affair with a girl that young. And then the film ends in just this really satisfying scene where Betsy and Arlene, they make these honestly really fun outfits out of the American flag, and they make this sign, and they figure out the exact route that Nixon is going to take when he resigns and gets on the helicopter and flies away. They figure out when he's going to fly over their building. And so as soon as he flies over their building, they open up this sign that says, "You suck, dick." And just the way that it shows Nixon's seeing the sign and realizing what it says, and then him getting pissed, and then him flipping them off is just really side-splittingly hilarious. So it ends the film with a really great gut-busting laugh. And I just love that ending. I really did. You suck, dick. But yeah, I really like the screenplay. It's even more clever when you actually are familiar with the Watergate scandal and the actual case. And the different people involved with it, like even people like John Dean, who was the president's advisor at the time, who was one of the people who turned against Nixon and also decided to go public with his information on Watergate. And he was pushed to do that in this script by Betsy and Arlene because they said, if you don't do anything, you're just as bad as he is. And then he's like, oh my God. So, yeah, clever screenplay. I think the whole idea, the concept of it is honestly brilliant satire. What if Deep Throat was just two ditzy teenage girls? And I do feel that it could be a little funnier. Like, that's really the only problem that I have with the screenplay for the most part, is just I think it could have been a little more humorous and funny in terms of some of the dialogue and some of the scenes. But overall, I did laugh quite a bit, and I did like the screenplay a lot. And I love this cast. A big part of why this movie works is because of this cast. I mean, Kirsten Dunst as Betsy was just charming and sweet and had a good deadpan, and was really wonderful with Michelle Williams as Arlene. The two just had really awesome chemistry, and they were just so much fun to watch together. And really did provide the film with not only, a good, appeal in terms of them being easy on the eyes, but also when it comes to their acting ability, and just the overall charm of the movie really comes to life and really solidifies itself because of these two and the way that they play their roles in it. And then you have Dan Hedaya, who is just an absolute perfect bit of casting as Richard Nixon. He looks the part. He even does a really good impression of Nixon. Um, he just cracked me up. It was so funny. Like even when he's being just a mean bastard. Like that scene near the end when he's annoyed at the dog. So shut up, or I'll feed you to the Chinese. It's just like, what an asshole. And like the way that he acted at the end, it just sold that gag at the end so well too. He's flying in a helicopter. He's all sad and depressed because the presidency is over, and he's flying away in disgrace. And then he looks down, sees the two girls wearing the American flag outfits, recognizes them, and then they pull out the sign, and then it's "You suck, dick," and then he's like, "Oh, it's great. It's so funny." Yeah, Dan Hedaya was amazing. Will Ferrell and Bruce McCulloch were also amazing. The two of them stole every scene that they were in. Very outside the box casting, but it worked brilliantly. Will Ferrell just cracked me up in terms of just the intensity he brought to that role and just his goofball antics. And then you have Bruce McCulloch, who's from Kids in the Hall. So you had like an SNL Kids in the Hall crossover here, which was awesome. And it wasn't just Bruce McCulloch who was in this from Kids in the Hall. You also had Dave Foley, who played Haldeman, and he was great too. But yeah, Bruce McCulloch as Carl Bernstein. Like he didn't even like say a line in some scenes, and it still had me on the floor laughing just because of like the way that he would like do a hair flip with the wig that he was wearing, and it was just a real awesome treat to see those two sketch comedy legends play off each other in this. Honestly, they were so good in this. I wish they had more screen time. That definitely would have made the film screenplay and the film overall funnier, as if there was just more scenes of those two. Teri Garr is also in this as Helen, Arlene's mom, and she's fine. Dave Foley was great as Haldeman. Jim Brewer was a weird bit of casting, playing a serious straight role in John Dean. I don't really know about that. He kind of pulled it off, but also kind of not, because it's Jim Brewer. Anna Gasteyer was only in it for a little bit, but she definitely made an impact. The president's dog doesn't poop. He does his business. And then you have like Harry Shearer, who played G. Gordon Liddy, and Harry Shearer is an actor who, to me, he's just better doing voiceovers. When he tries to be like a live actor in comedies and stuff, or in Godzilla, the 90s movie, like it just doesn't work. It just feels like he's not really playing the role in a way that makes you buy it. There's just a very ineffective fake thing about his acting. He's like the weakest part of the cast. The rest of the cast is great. Even Ryan Reynolds was fun as Chip. So yeah, really a great cast, and then some nice cinematography by Alexander Gruzinski. The editing by Mia Goldman, I thought was for the most part genuinely marvelous. I don't really think there were a lot of issues that I had with the way that the film was edited. And the music by John Debney worked for the film, the kind of film that it was trying to be. Definitely very light in terms of the tone and the composition of it, but it was very fitting for such a film like Dick, and the music choices that they used were fitting as well. So overall, yeah, I liked it quite a bit, and honestly, I would recommend the film, even if you're not really a super big fan of political films or comedies of this nature. I would still recommend it because there's enough about it to me that's genuinely clever and very well done that I think it's absolutely well worth watching. But anyway, thank you for watching my review of Dick, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.